Two of the key questions BYU faces in their matchup against East Carolina on Saturday could be answered by the return of two key players from injury.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the return of two players from injury that could face major questions, but also be major answers to BYU's hopes against East Carolina on the road this Saturday, those being Weylin Lapuaho and Justin Kirkland. Then we're going to talk about something that West Virginia announced they plan to do that BYU, Texas Tech, and other top-tier Big 12 schools already have happening for them. And I'm not going to lie, I think West Virginia is way behind the eight ball on this, I'll be honest. Then we're going to finish up today's show with some BYU basketball notes, a key official visit over the weekend that BYU would do well to land the services of KJ Perry. What are the chances they can get this highly rated JUCO prospect? Well, I wouldn't count out Kevin Young in anything at this juncture. We'll get to all that, and it's all brought to you today by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and get $20 off your first purchase. All right, if you were listening to Kalani Sitake's media session yesterday, there was a lot of questions about player personnel notes. JoJo Phillips out for quite a while, but Kalani Sitake said the hopes are that he's back before the season ends. He said that Che Bryant-Struther is going to have to announce what his future holds for him. That doesn't portend to be a really positive thing when Kalani Sitake says he wants to give the player a chance to make their announcement, because that harkens back to, if you remember, Ben Bywater when he had a career-ending shoulder injury. Kalani Sitake said it's Ben's decision on when he wants to announce that, and Ben ultimately had to call it quits due to a degenerative shoulder issue that really never got better after he got injured against Kansas in BYU's first year in the Big 12. So best wishes to Che Bryant-Struther and whatever is going on with him. Also, quick healing vibes going out to a guy like JoJo Phillips. But the good news is also on the personnel front was that Kalani Sitake acknowledged that two key players in the trenches for BYU could be back in time for this weekend against East Carolina. One of which he said unequivocally is available. That's Weylin Lapuaho. As BYU starting left guard, Weylin has been an absolute stalwart at that position. His versatility has also been noted. Played at right tackle last year against Houston when BYU needed a guy to fill into that spot at the tail end of the season. He is a guy that when he is on the field, he is one of maybe, if not the best offensive lineman BYU has. And that's saying something, considering right now Isaiah Jada, if you've been paying attention to PFF grades, is the number one rated offensive tackle across the country, according to Pro Football Focus. No, not Spencer Fano, not Caleb Lomu up at Utah. Yeah, Isaiah Jada from good old Brigham Young University, the number one rated offensive tackle in the country. But I'm telling you, Weylin Lapuaho is as good, maybe even better than that. And him returning to the lineup for BYU should help them with their blitz pickup. I'm sure that TJ Woods drilled those guys hard during the bye week, considering how many hits, sacks, and the like they gave up against Stanford. They know that this is a blitz-happy ECU defense. We talked about it. Those of you who are everydayers heard it yesterday on the podcast. ECU through 3 games has 9 sacks and, more importantly, 28 tackles for loss. That's better than 9 TFLs and 3 sacks per game. They absolutely get after it on the defensive line. And having one of your best offensive linemen returning from injury, that should be a major boon to BYU's chances of keeping Bear Bachmeier cleaner than they did against Stanford. I love Weylin Lapuaho, and what I was told is when he really didn't progress much in training camp, even though the coaches said that they were holding out as a precautionary measure, right at the outset of the season, talking with people around the program, the whole thought process was to keep him in the working out process until he was fully cleared, and then to have him ready by the time they got to this game against East Carolina. And apparently that plan has absolutely worked out. I love the fact that he'll be back for a game like this, because even if he doesn't play the whole game, because I'd be hard-pressed to think he's in game shape, considering he hasn't played a game in, almost 10 months, I think you still work him in. Sonny Makassini is currently listed as the co-starter at left guard alongside him. Absolutely. Sonny is capable of spelling him for a series or two. Kyle Safarchuk has shown his versatility across the interior of the offensive line and absolutely could be an option there as well. But when Weylin is on the field, that's a major boon to BYU's chances of going to East Carolina and getting a victory. The other name to pay attention to was that of Justin Kirkland. Now, Justin is a guy that Cougar fans have absolutely been looking forward to seeing on the field. He's a former Roy High School prospect, played at Utah Tech, and then transferred to Oklahoma State. Well, he decided to want to be a little closer to home, decided to transfer to BYU, but had a nagging knee injury that beset him throughout the entirety of the summer training camp, but he's been working diligently at getting back. And Kalani Sitake noted that he actually wore pads last week and practiced for BYU on that defensive line. At 340 pounds, or whatever he's listed at, Justin Kirkland is an absolute load in the middle of a defensive line. And if he is available this weekend, because that was the thing, is Kalani Sitake was unequivocal in saying that Weylin is available, kind of hedged his bet on a guy like Justin Kirkland. But if Justin is available, you need to get pressure on Catton Hauser this weekend. There's just absolutely no doubt BYU's defensive line has to make ECU's quarterback uncomfortable. And having a guy like Justin Kirkland who can eat up double and triple teams would free up a guy like free up a guy like Keanu Tanuvasa with more one-on-one opportunities. And Keanu Tanuvasa has shown that if given the opportunity to go one-on-one with most offensive linemen, more often than not, he's going to win that battle, and he'll also get pressure on the quarterback. And getting pressure right up the middle into the face of a quarterback, that is their worst nightmare because they can't do much of anything because that closes the pocket faster than anything else by getting pressure right up the gut, right into their face. It also frees up BYU's defensive ends, guys like Vili Puha, as well as Bodie Schoonover. You also think of Tausili Akana, on down the list, Hunter Clegg, Logan Latui. They've all got to be chomping at the bit at the prospect of having a load in the middle of that defensive line to match with Keanu Tanuvasa to make them that much ferocious on that defensive front. That only makes BYU's defense better. So I've got my fingers crossed that Justin Kirkland is cleared to play this weekend. Even if, much like Weylin Lapuaho, he's not in full game shape, you have to maybe play him for short spurts. His presence on the defensive line will cause fits for the ECU offensive front, and they will have to account for him, thereby giving more opportunities, as I mentioned, to Keanu Tanuvasa and the other defensive ends to get after Catton Hauser, get in his face, and harass him, and make BYU's defense that much more, I guess you'd call it, potent in terms of their matchup against a pass-happy East Carolina offense. So I look forward to this. Like I said, Weylin cleared to return. We'll see on Justin Kirkland, but if and when both of them hit the field for BYU, that's a huge, huge boost to BYU's chances of beating East Carolina and getting out of non-conference play 3-0. And that's what we're all here for. We want to see BYU unscathed, hopefully all the way until they face up against Utah in mid-October. But goal number one right now, get past East Carolina. That's the full focus, going to Greenville and getting the W on Saturday. All right, coming up next, West Virginia, just up the road from Greenville, South Carolina. You know, the Mountaineers, they have announced call it an mission statement, whatever you want to call it, to boost their athletics budget. And they are calling upon Mountaineer Nation, if you want to call it that, to essentially respond in mass to help them out achieve this goal. Here's the deal. I believe BYU is already on top of this, and they did it without even trying. And we'll explain why they're going to continue to have a hand up on a program like West Virginia, at least from my perspective. And we'll get into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is here for you guys to reward you for the games you're already watching. That's the best part about this. The Daily Fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. That's the best part about it. It's quick, it's easy, and it's honestly the best way to follow along with football because they're players you're already watching. You're already thinking about how good or bad they might be doing. You can check your projections like Josh Allen for more or less than 270 passing yards. Saquon Barkley is going to have more or less than 1 rushing TD. It's as simple as that. You make your picks, and then even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still double your money and come out a winner on top. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. It's all courtesy of your friends over at Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing fantastic out there. Now, I probably need to issue a mea culpa to the ECU fans out there who were upset that I did not get East Carolina right all day yesterday on the podcast. I did call it Eastern Carolina. My apologies for that. And I also, Conway, South Carolina is where Coastal Carolina is located. Greenville is in North Carolina. So my apologies to the ECU fans in my mentions, my DMs, and also in the comments on YouTube. That's my mea culpa. I apologize for that. I should be better about it. In fact, I was a guy who was considering studying geography in college. I should be better about knowing where Conway, South Carolina, and Greenville, North Carolina are. So accept my apologies. But all the same, thank you for your support, supporting the show, being with it every single day, rating, reviewing, and sharing with your family and friends. All of that helps us build this audience, and appreciate everything you guys have done to help us build this out. All right, so West Virginia announced something yesterday that was very curious to me. They have announced what they're calling a resolution. It's an athletics resolution as a time of profound change. This comes from the release in college athletics. West Virginia University Board of Governors voted unanimously for resolution in support of West Virginia athletics, calling for the development of a financial plan that positions the university in the top funding tier among Big 12 institutions while simultaneously strengthening the university's paramount core academic mission. Now, the interesting part about this is that West Virginia has, as they say, 210 plus Mountaineer alumni around the world. They said that they want to connect those Mountaineers to the university they know and love. That they want to, as they say, we look forward to a trajectory of continued success for our student athletes as our Board of Governors, university administration, committed alumni, and corporate partners rally together to build its future, unquote. Now, I understand why West Virginia has aspirations of doing this because, simply put, college football, college sports in general, it's an arms race. There's just zero doubt about it. If you have the money, guess what? More often than not, you're going to win. And that's been the way of college sports for literally decades, essentially since the inception of intercollegiate athletics. Teams that have programs that have money, think of the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Alabamas, the Georgias. They routinely win at the highest levels. And the Big 12, while they may not have the highest funded athletics departments or programs out there, they got some heavy hitters. And the good news is, if you're a Cougar fan, BYU is one of them. West Virginia is aspiring and putting out this resolution to essentially find its way into the tier that BYU, Texas Tech, I would say a program like Kansas, with the money that they just had, that one booster invested, David Booth, I think it was $300 million. That's the type of funding that West Virginia aspires to have coming into its coffers. The nice part is, if you're looking at it, with 210,000 alumni, that's a decent number of alumni, both nation and worldwide, for West Virginia to call upon. Well, I did a quick Google search because I had seen recently that BYU's alumni base was pretty large. And this may not be the actual number that I remember seeing, but as of 2024, BYU's total living alumni numbered 449,197. That comes from BYU.edu. So nearly 450,000 living alumni. And if you add another graduating class here in 2025, the thought process is that probably is already past 450,000 people. That is more than double in terms of the alumni base that BYU has versus West Virginia. And oh, by the way, BYU has just, I call it a small army of highly, as a former athletic director told me once, blessed individuals financially that want nothing more to invest their money into BYU athletics, and in particular programs like BYU football and BYU basketball, because they see that as advancing the mission of the university and thereby advancing the mission of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. West Virginia absolutely should aspire and should absolutely chase a chance to be, as they say, a top tier funded institution in the Big 12. The good news is BYU's already there, and they did it in many respects without having to really hit the pavement, put out a public call like West Virginia had to do. They have alumni, speaking of BYU, who want nothing more than to essentially pay it on and pay it back to the university that gave them their start. And a lot of them out there are well known. Guys like Ryan Smith, they don't have to look very far to find these, as we hear, individuals who've got very deep pockets and been willing to turn around and invest in BYU, and more importantly, in BYU athletics. That's an absolute blessing that BYU has. The university itself has shown a willingness after years of essentially kind of eschewing this and pushing it away, because it was under the table. Now that it's above table, NIL's in the mix. You have transfer portal, revenue sharing. Well, Travis Hansen, who just recently was hired as the new associate AD for NIL and revenue share, he essentially is running BYU's athletics financial arm as if he were a front office executive at a professional sports franchise. He is trying to find the money and distribute it and make sure that BYU athletics remains as one of the top funded institutions in the Big 12. So while I understand West Virginia's aspirations of doing this, the nice part is BYU is already there. And with a little extra work, and I'm not saying that BYU hasn't done work, because trust me, I know some of the people behind the scenes, guys like Robbie Bosco, Lee Johnson, Chad Lewis, even to a level, have been instrumental in helping BYU fundraise since they essentially got the invite to the Big 12, and more importantly, since entering the Big 12 conference, to make sure that BYU's financial coffers for BYU athletics are as absolutely stocked as they possibly can be. BYU is also making more money from their media rights deals than they ever have before. So it is a very, very good time to be in BYU athletics. And Kalani Sitake acknowledged it yesterday. He said that the travel budget to go to East Carolina this week is a whole lot more robust than it was last time they went out there in 2017 and ultimately lost to East Carolina. Will that ultimately make a difference in them winning or losing this football game? TBD. But as I mentioned, money, it speaks. It talks really, really loudly in this day and age of college sports. You don't need to look any further than what guys like Cody Campbell, who is I think he's the chair of the Board of Regents for Texas Tech University and a billionaire multiple times over. He's invested and built multiple billion-dollar oil and gas companies, and all he's done is reinvest that money and send large chunks of it to his alma mater at Texas Tech. So Texas Tech, they're flush with cash. I think what David Booth offered to Kansas, that's going to have them sitting pretty for quite a while, because $300 million, that's a nice chunk of change to have. But while BYU obviously is not going to go out there and crow about, hey, this person put in this massive amount of money and this person over here put this other massive amount of money, we have heard that dozens upon dozens, and I've heard it on very good authority from multiple people, that BYU can make phone calls to get the money or monies that they need without making many phone calls, because there's a lot of people, as I mentioned, who have got some really, really deep pockets. And as I mentioned before as well, they're very invested in the success of BYU athletics, and they see it as a way, as I mentioned, to further the mission of BYU as a university, but also further the mission, the aims of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Because as Val Hell and other former athletic directors have mentioned at BYU, when BYU athletics wins at a high level, people are more interested in the church as a result. There's just a correlation across the board that when BYU athletics is winning and winning at an extremely high level, people are more willing to listen to the missionaries out there in the mission field, especially stateside. Don't ask me to show you the numbers, because I'm going off what people are telling me, but these are people who I trust that have seen the numbers and understand that the correlation absolutely matches up. So good on you, West Virginia. I wish you the absolute best in going about building that fundraising arm, and hopefully you do enter the top tier of fundraising and being a fully funded or a top tier funded athletic department at the Big 12 level. Just hope the BYU stays well ahead of you. That's my personal opinion, because I like watching winning football, winning basketball, and really winning everything in between. That's what BYU is doing right now. And we'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily, because as John McBride, who is the associate AD for BYU's sports information department, there are 3 programs that have across their fall sports that have already started playing 1 or fewer losses. BYU is one of them. And the good news is, looks like the good times are set to roll on for cross country, golf, women's soccer, women's basketball, women's volleyball, all the men's sports, basketball, football, everything in between. BYU is flush with cash, from what I understand, and it's coming to bear in the form of wins on whatever playing surface these teams are hitting. And that's a very, very positive sign for BYU's future, as West Virginia tries to essentially play catch up and stay up with the Joneses, or for the first time, BYU might actually be the Joneses versus trying to keep up with them. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit more, as I mentioned, about BYU sports, BYU basketball. A couple of notes on that front, including a very interesting official visit that could be beneficial to BYU's future prospects in the post-AJ Dybantsa and Richie Saunders world. We'll get into that next as we round out this edition of Locked On Cougars right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, college football is back. We've all been enjoying it. I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stand, there is nothing like it. But the one thing can be a real downer, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle in the game itself. And trust me, with BYU, it's absolutely the truth. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping up at checkout. That's why I want you guys to do what I do and use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay in the app. That's my favorite feature, bar none, of what Game Time offers. The best part is the app makes it super simple. You can see exactly what the exact fee for your receipt is before you buy it. And the best part is they also have zone deals. You don't care exactly what your specific seat is. You pick a section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big along the way. So take the guesswork out of buying your college football tickets and do it with our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off on the Game Time app. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not signed up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, what are you waiting for? Get the inside scoop on all things BYU. For example, I mentioned earlier that Weylin Lapuaho, I was told at the outset of the season the whole target was to get him back in time for East Carolina. Well, yes, guess who's known about that for multiple weeks? Oh, yeah, our Locked On Cougars Insider Group member. So join us today. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU. It's just $5 a month to be a part of the group. And the kicker is you get a 14-day free trial, 2 full weeks to see if it's the right option for you guys. Click the link in the show notes below or reach out to us. We'll get you squared away as a newfound member of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Before we go on today's show, let's talk about some BYU basketball news. Now, junior college prospect KJ Perry made an official visit to BYU this past weekend. And as Robbie McCombs from Vanquish the Phone notes, he may be arguably the best junior college prospect in the 2026 recruiting cycle. He visited BYU this past weekend, and he posted about the visit. But then what he told Robbie was an interesting thing about this. He says, quote, "Highlights of my visit were being able to watch practice and be on the same page with the coaching staff. KY has a really good system that fits my play style. I think BYU plans to use me as an on-ball defensive threat who can score and get his teammates involved. I got to kick it with Xavier Staten and AJ Dybantsa most of the visit. They're very welcoming to BYU. I plan to commit to a school within the next 30 days. Overall, really good visit, but I got a couple more to take, so we'll see where home is," unquote. Now, as Robbie notes, he's already visited SMU and USC with plans to visit TCU and Oregon in addition to that official visit he made to BYU. I will say this. KJ Perry looks like the exact right guy BYU needs in the post-AJ Dybantsa and Richie Saunders era because, as he mentions, an on-ball defender, that's exactly what you need. They're going to have some guys already sticking around from this year's team that obviously will be looking to take on bigger roles, but having a guy who is capable of being that complement for a Robert Wright III, who I don't necessarily see Robert Wright III jumping to the NBA after the season, but if he were to, KJ Perry could slot right in to that point guard role. But also, he could be that off-ball defender to help an undersized guard like Robert Wright III continue to thrive in BYU system post-AJ Dybantsa and Richie Saunders. Is he an elite-sized guard? No, he's 6'3", but he is absolutely dynamic. Everything that I've read and heard about him indicates that he would be a really, really nice addition for BYU, and the fact that other programs, the caliber that BYU is competing with for him, SMU, USC, TCU, Oregon, some top-tier programs want him. I wouldn't count Kevin Young out for anything on that front. Also, BYU has found out when they will play their first exhibition game this basketball season. That'll be October 18th. That's the day of BYU-Utah, the rivalry game in football. And the nice part is it's getting it out of the way early. It's an 11 a.m. Mountain Time tip between the Nebraska Cornhuskers and BYU out in Lincoln. It's going to be aired on Big Ten Plus. So it is a subscription you're going to have to get if you want to watch BYU and AJ Dybantsa's first official game action, albeit in exhibition mode, to watch that. But getting that out of the way early at 11 a.m. frees up the rest of the day to obviously find out exactly when the Holy War will be played. And I'm looking forward to seeing this BYU basketball team hit the court. There has been so much hype, so much talk, so much about BYU hoops that I cannot wait for that season to start. And I will never, ever wish away college football season. It's been an incredible first 4 weeks if you include week 0 across college football, but I think we're 48 or 47, I think it's 47 days away from the start of the college basketball season. And This might be, as John Rothstein has referred to, the most anticipated BYU basketball season quite literally ever. And BYU's been playing basketball since like the late 1890s. So it's been some pretty highly thought of basketball teams, guys like Danny Ainge, Jimmer Fredette. But when you have AJ Dybantsa, Richie Saunders, Robert Wright III, Keba Keita, what BYU has on this roster this year, AJ said it himself. The bar, the low bar is the Sweet 16. What's the aspiration? National title, the first Final Four in program history. It's what it feels like. And that's the exciting part about what BYU has out there for them as they chase that this season. So I'm looking forward to seeing how BYU basketball progresses this year. Now, a couple of the notes before we go on today's show, catching up on some of the BYU notes from last week and early this week, is that BYU women's volleyball, if you've not been paying attention, is absolutely rocking and rolling. They are a perfect 9-0 on the season, ranked 16th on the season, and they have not played really slouches, especially the last little bit. They swept number 16 USC last week in straight sets. That was on the road down in California at Gersten Pavilion. LMU hosted that. BYU got the win over number 16 USC. They beat LMU, the host, in straight sets, and also Western Michigan. So BYU women's volleyball is absolutely killing it. And as John McBride mentioned, BYU is one of three programs or three universities out there. Nebraska is one of them, and I don't remember the other one off the top of my head, that have one or fewer loss across all their fall sports who are currently in competition. And the only loss belongs to BYU women's soccer, but BYU women's soccer has played an absolute dogged schedule. They beat UCLA at home. They beat Auburn, who was ranked at the time. They did lose 1-0 to Arkansas. That's the lone loss on the season. They bounced back with a 2-0 win over Utah State and Utah Valley in back-to-back games last week, or actually the last 2 weeks. And now they are going to open in Big 12 play, and they very well could and should be the Big 12 favorites in my book, because they're absolutely killing it. And Jennifer Rockwood, she has proven that she can just put together these rosters, and all they do is they don't skip a beat. I love the fact that BYU women's soccer is killing it out there, and I wish them the best as they enter Big 12 play, taking on Arizona State later this week, and we'll see how it all shakes out. And also, if you're looking at an update in terms of BYU men's golf, which is highly, highly thought of, I think they're ranked 13th in the country right now. They opened their fall season yesterday, actually, and they'll finish it up today at the 2025 Woolholly Classic up in Colville, Utah. Now, this Woolholly Golf Club is a newer golf club, and I haven't had a chance to play it, but I've heard it's absolutely incredible. And BYU is participating in it. University of Utah is hosting this event and hoping that BYU has a positive outcome from it. I have not seen an update. I didn't get an update in terms of scores before I hit record on today's show, but this is a really, really deep and talented BYU men's golf squad. So much like women's volleyball, much like women's soccer, football, good times are rolling forth with BYU athletics. The cross-country programs, the defending national champions, they opened their season with their Autumn Classic, had a perfect 15 points each to win it. So, yeah, the BYU athletics department they're rolling right now. And that's a really, really fun thing to consider, is that it's not just football. It's not just basketball. The entire expanse and depth of BYU's athletic department is showing that it's got absolute studs across the board and should be challenging for conference titles, if not national titles. And that's a very positive thing to pay attention to if you're a Cougar fan watching these teams and supporting them. Because the other thing I love about BYU fans, you guys out there, you're hardy souls. You may love BYU football most of all. You may love BYU basketball as your favorite sport, but you also support BYU in general, whether it's BYU soccer, swim and dive, tennis. It could be one of the extramural sports like lacrosse, whatever it is. Rugby, for example. BYU fans love BYU for BYU, and that's a really, really cool thing that I don't think a lot of other athletic departments and universities literally nationwide quite have. And that's a really, really special thing about what makes BYU kind of stand out from the rest of the crowd in collegiate athletics. All right. That's going to do it for today's show. So hope you guys have a fantastic Tuesday whenever you hear and or watch this. But as always, thank you truthfully for all of your support. You guys have been absolutely wonderful. The response from yesterday's podcast was overwhelmingly positive, outside of the fact that I made 2 gas when referring to East Carolina. But as always, thank you for subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing it with your family and friends. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Come back tomorrow and be an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.